Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're joined by Sophia Rosa, a project and organizational change manager, to discuss whether changing an ERP system is a rewrite. Sophia, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with us. I learned about you through my sister, former guest Dave Martin, and she was talking about, offline, not on the show, she was telling me about how you and her worked at the same company, and that company was changing an ERP system, and they decided they were going to change it out. And this is a major piece of technology. And this is something that Isaac and I have gone back and forth. Like, does this count as a rewrite as we know about it? So, I guess, could you start off, introduce yourself, and talk about what is an ERP system and what goes into changing one?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm glad that I was invited. To answer your question or to start that exploration, an ERP or an enterprise resource planning tool is a major software that's going to track all of your business from the beginning to the end. So, from when your consumer, whether that's business to business or business to consumer, is placing an order, all the way through the process of preparing that order and, of course, collecting money, billing the customer. And it also is going to involve any procurement from vendors that you have to keep your business running. So it is the system by which businesses consider all of the source of truth within it. So having said that, when you're changing the platform that all of that important data lives,
Mm-hmm.
it's a major undertaking, and it obviously also exposes areas that you may not have realized are not as clean or as accurate as you would assume or would want them to be. And that's common across the board, no matter what company does an ERP migration. So typically, when we call it an ERP migration or an ERP implementation, um, just those two different words can lend itself to recognizing that what we're doing here is where picking up all of the information from a legacy system, translating it, massaging it, and putting it over into a brand new system that's going to offer new functionality, new process options, new reporting that we can do. And obviously, the intention is always an ROI. So, what's our return on investment here? How is this change that's major actually supporting growth for the company, given the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it is a pretty hefty investment for the most part? That is essentially an ERP implementation or migration, and the project that your sister and I worked on together. Having said that, I would immediately say, and I don't want to, jump to the end, right? But the point being of, is it a rewrite? I absolutely believe it's not a rewrite.
Hmm.
It is an iteration because the business is the business. The business is still operating exactly the way that it always does because you have your set customers, you have your product, you know exactly what it is that your current processes are and
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do with them. It's just changing the conditions within that you are operating. And although it's a great opportunity to point out anywhere where there's waste or there's operational enhancements that you can make, that to me is an iteration. That is a growth process based on what we already know, what we already do, and what we've committed to as a business. That is our intention and our point. Even though it's such a major, major shift, I
Mm-hmm.
still very much see it as an iteration of what we're doing and what the process is because it's just on the side of where is this occurring in a system. So I don't know if you agree
Yeah.
with that or see it differently or have questions about, challenge that position or what have you. But
Oh
I
no!
think
I mean, I think we're done here.
philosophically,
So,
I know,
I was gonna say philosophically, yes, but I was curious to know like a kind of a breakthrough or a breakdown of like each step
right?
as you start this migration process, because really it's like the details. It does sound like okay, iteration. I mean, you've got me there. I'm sold already.
Hmm.
Um, uh, but to kind of prove it's iterative, let's kind of like walk
Yeah,
through what the whole flow looks like.
well,
absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to ask a different question because I have never worked with an ERP, and I think most of our listeners probably also have not. What are some of the major ERP? Like, is Oracle an ERP, or are they? Okay.
Yes, and so my experience is very specifically with Oracle products in general. Legacy products that I've helped people move off of vary greatly. But from my experience, yeah, I am very familiar with Oracle products from the ERP perspective. So that's a good example of one.
Okay. I have only worked with Oracle with a company that was using Oracle as just as a database, and the whole
Ah,
thing was very strange because why would you do that? Um, and so, Isaac, I'll give some context to our listeners. So, Oracle is an ERP. It's a system, like it's at the core, it's a database, like it's a relational database. But on top of it, they have all these modules that installed, and all these modules have business rules, and they do things like taxes and everything else. And so you get this whole lot of giant chunks of business logic, and then they sell you on top of that custom programming to customize it for your business.
mhm.
And so
Gotcha.
I guess if you're going from Oracle to something else, some other ERP, the thing that isn't going to be the same or that would need to be migrated would be all of that custom logic and custom software, right?
Mm.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Most clients who are migrating an ERP start out with the ideal vision that
Mm-hmm.
customization won't be necessary, that they can use the system, quote unquote, out of the box. It
Has
rarely
that ever
occurs that
happened?
way. No, it rarely occurs that way. Now, I can say, though, that the times that I've seen it work are when we are only migrating financials.
Mm.
So if we're just taking the module for, and to use terminology that is most familiar in the NetSuite world, since that's what's coming up, so Oracle's NetSuite as an ERP, it would be the report to report portion or the module, also called the process area, where we're bringing in anything so that it can be your source of bookkeeping. That I have seen happen pretty much out of the box. However, if you're going to run your entire business
Mm-hmm.
off of it, where you want to actually have all the details for your customers, vendors, your orders, your items, everything you might build, everything you might buy, everything you might sell, including service, that is rarely out of the box. So it's a very good call out that customization is something that is a major piece of this, because you're going to have customization most likely to accommodate for the business processes that you have in your legacy system.
Mm-hmm.
And those don't exist in the new one.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to either build them from scratch based on the previous,
Mm-hmm.
or find some sort of connector that already exists that somebody else built at some point and pull that in, or purchase that piece, or pay a consulting firm to build it for you. So there are a lot of details as far as that's concerned that are nuanced. And even though that's the case, I'm still going to stick with the idea that it's an iteration, because that process that you are picking up from one place and moving over to the other is
Mm-hmm.
just getting a facelift. It's getting an overhaul. It needs some code, absolutely, and it might need brand new, fresh information to operate in the new system. And yet, the concept and the basic need that it's meeting, the business requirement that it's meeting, is the same.
Interesting. I have so many follow-up questions. So to help our listeners visualize it, if you were using Oracle to start with, and you move to I don't know another one,
SAP?
SAP. You're moving from Oracle to SAP just for discussion purposes. Um, are the Oracle customizations, are those written in like a SQL, like I think T-SQL language, or are those written in like a Java, or how like what do those look like in Oracle land, and what do they look like in SAP land?
That's relatively flexible. It's also a bit out of my range of
Hmm.
intimate knowledge. Typically, it'll be a team of developers who are working on that, but there's many pass-throughs as well. So there's middleware that you can use, and some of them are SQL based, and some of them are not, and it depends on which one you choose. And if you have a particular preference of what you would like that backend to look like as it's passing data from one to the other, you can certainly shop around for that. But yeah, it can be multiple different methods and tools, and you need a developer team that is going to know exactly what's the best fit for you. And if you have opinions on what you want that to be, you search for someone who's a skilled worker in that language.
Okay, so someone like yourself who is the change manager, I imagine one of the things you bring to the table that's incredibly powerful is you know where to look for all of the customizations so that they all get tracked before like you try to migrate them to SAP. Because I can imagine if I did it, or if you tried to do it yourself, you wouldn't know where to even start looking for all of these customizations.
True. And I'd like to offer a little bit broader of a definition so that we're speaking the same language as far as change management is concerned.
Yeah.
So what you're referring to about being able to track all of those customizations and making sure that all of them are listed and each task that's associated with them is marked, that's on the project management side. Although it sounds like change management, a lot of folks in the industry right now talk change control as if it's change management. Organizational change management is technically the term for what I have specialized in. OCM is focused on the people side. So I'm certified by ProSci, and ProSci has a particular way of summarizing what the differences are. That it was either founder Jeff Hyatt or Tim Creasy, who is higher up there right now, that explained it. Project management prepares a solution for the organization, and organizational change management prepares the organization for the solution. So this has much more to do with user adoption, with readiness, with training, with testing, and validating that the system is not only ready, that's kind of on the project management side, but the users who are responsible for keeping things going on day one of cutover actually feel informed, ready, heard, that they have buy-in, that they have the training that they need, and a willingness as well. And so it has almost a factor of motivation that's involved in it. And that motivation starts all the way back at the beginning.
Yes.
And it usually has the highest influence from the project sponsor, who can typically be the C-level person who is responsible and accountable for this entire thing in the end. When that person is highly involved, there's a statistic that ProSci has done years and years of research on. When that person is highly involved and has very clear messaging for the organization, the project itself is 7 times more likely to be successful on day one, not only from the KPIs that are involved, that's key performance indicators, if that's something that isn't familiar to folks, and the metrics that have been laid out as a definition of success, 7 times more likely to hit those when that project sponsor is extremely involved, vocal, and is offering information. I mean, confusion is a direct link to the human emotion anger. When we have clarity, we feel more apt to buy in, to offer questions, to have a sense of security or curiosity even, that lends itself very well to saying, you know what, I'm a part of this and I'm ready for it and I want to do this and I see the reasons why. It's also delicate because a C-level executive is likely to want that messaging to be very specific, and in some cases, not necessarily the entire story. They are not necessarily going to share all of the conversations that have gone into the decision and the reasoning of why this change is happening. Some of that might be kept closer to the heart, as opposed to offering all of it. However, the reason, sorry, I think, go ahead.
Oh, I was just trying to think, can you give me an example? Because To me, that sounds like a lot of, some of the reasons might be that they're getting ready to sell the company. They want to bring it to an ERP that a potential buyer might be using,
Mm,
or and they don't
hmm
want to say that,
hmm
obviously, or that there could be some cost savings that could result in a layoff. Would be
hmm
the other thing that you would want to keep close to the vest. Are those,
hmm
is that what you're talking about?
Yes, there are multiple different factors that are kept at that level that
Mm-hmm.
are not necessarily going to be communicated to the users that are being asked to adopt it. So that's where I'm saying this is a delicate challenge where the change manager is managing more what's our messaging, what is going to inform and protect some of the information that's necessary to be protected, and also create motivation and buy-in. And that relationship then between the project manager, the organizational change manager, and the project sponsor or C
Mm-hmm.
level individual are the three, I guess, corners of the triangle that add up to success. And those decisions about the package that we're offering to the business, but also to the people,
Mm-hmm.
is very carefully thought through, because a lot of folks, one of the first things that comes to mind is, am I going to lose my job? Is this going to take away my role here? Especially right now with AI
Yeah.
and automation. And automation has been a thing for, decades now already, and it still has been a major concern. Well, if this gets automated, that means that I don't have to do all of this clicking or validating anymore. So what do I do with my life? What am I doing here? Are they going to need me? Those types of things are very valid, very human
Mm-hmm.
responses to a major change like this. And part of what an organizational change manager does is prepare the people leaders with answers to those questions, because the users need answers to those questions. And we call it
Yes.
the WIFM, or the what's in it for me. So from that perspective, the person is saying, okay, this is great. Super happy for you all for making this decision for the business. But, what happens with
What
my
happens to me?
baby? Yeah, exactly.
Um, yes, that is a wonderful way to put it. And it makes me just, I have so many questions, follow up questions. Um, so, with these kinds of changes, does the immediate, like in the immediate changeover, is there usually a lot of process change that occurs at the same time? Or is it usually a in place changeover and then the process gets automated in a second step?
That's a great question and a great point. It usually, and again, this is kind of when a company starts out from their idealized perspective of, we bought this new software and we're going to
Mm-hmm.
use it out of the box. It's going to be great. They think we're going to take all of our processes exactly as they are and move them over. And then they start to learn about the new platform and the options that are available. And oh my goodness,
Mm.
never thought that we could do that. Oh, look at this. Last year we figured out that we had 42 hours of waste every week in the warehouse, and now we can completely change that and turn it into something that's you know that's going to remove that waste. And that means we have to do all of these new processes in order to go through it. And there are processes that absolutely are going to change just from the fact that you're using a totally different system. So, but from the operational perspective, a lot of times we'll start out thinking, oh, yeah, we're just going to do what we do. We're just going to do it over there in that software. And then the more inspiration that is brought by exploring the new platform, the more changes in process there are. So this is now flipping to the project management side, where we're talking
Mm-hmm.
scope. So the three pillars from project management are the scope, the timeline, and the budget. So when you're expanding scope, the other two are going to have to accommodate. If you are restricting timeline, the other two are going to have to accommodate. They have a relationship with each other that's almost formulaic. And keeping a close watch on that is the project manager side. Um, the organizational change manager side is, all right, if we're changing these processes and we're changing everything that all of our users are looking at, that they're used to interacting with, that they're used to, some of them, especially in a warehouse, come in and it's second nature. They've been doing it sometimes for 20 years, exactly the same process.
Muscle memory. They don't even look at the
Right.
monitor anymore.
Right. And humans, we as people often feel a sense of pride, and our identity can sometimes be tied to that. And that can be viewed as, this is how I'm valuable.
Mm.
So you can imagine when those things change, it almost can be received as a threat in some
Right.
cases. And if a person feels threatened, are they more likely to perform? Not necessarily with commitment. So I know I'm deviating a little bit from what we were going for, but
No. This is great and amazing, because
Mm-hmm.
the question I was going to ask next is, because in a lot of the software cutovers that Isaac and I, or software rewrites that Isaac and I deal with, right, there's this cutover, which is a theoretical cutover, right? We're going to turn off the old system. We're going to turn on the new system. We're going to turn off the old system, and you're going to use the new system. And what usually happens when people actually try to do that is the new system falls flat on its face. They turn the old system back on,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they limp along.
Mhm.
And an ERP seems so much larger, and the two systems, the old and the new, seem so disjointed that I imagine a cutover truly is a one way and you must march forward kind of an operation.
Absolutely. A key piece of managing that, and now we're on the PM side,
Mm-hmm.
is planning for mock cutovers and always having a sandbox environment. Depending on the size of the organization, multiple sandbox environments are valuable because you can pretend or move through the exercise, even with your integrations, because you can point your integrations to your sandbox. And if you have sandbox environments on the integration side of the front end, if you're bringing in orders from a platform like Shopify or Magento or whatever, those can also be connected to the practice or sandbox environments. And you can go through the exact practice, like a dress rehearsal of what's going to happen on that cutover. Because a lot of businesses need to do this on a weekend so that there is no business day lost.
Mm.
If you don't practice, you're going to get chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be everyone's first experience, even if you have somebody at the helm of the project on the client side or the consulting side that has done this a million times. Each and every one is unique in its own way. And sometimes things get revealed that you had no idea were an issue behind the scenes. Things like single sign-on, for example, could completely derail the whole thing for no reason. It doesn't even have anything to do with the actual platform or the change of the data or any of that was going into this. But if your users can't get in,
Then
we
they
got a
can't
problem,
get
right?
Yes.
So yeah, mock cutovers are a big, important way, from my perspective, from the seat that I take in a project, that we mitigate or work to resolve and prepare. And my background prior to technology is in theater. So my degree is in acting and directing. And
Ah,
I had a whole career as a stage play director, which lends itself very well to this work,
yes.
because it's program
That's
management,
really cool.
essentially.
Yeah.
So, from that perspective, you're never going to put the actors out there without a dress rehearsal week. We called it Tech Week. So we've got to test everything. We've got to test: are the lights running at the right time? Is there sound cues happening? Are they connected to one another? How are our set changes going? It's all the same concept. These different components all have to be organized in a sequential method and have to be tested, and then of course tested end to end. So
Mm-hmm.
once you have done your mock cutover, for example, I always recommend that we do end to end testing. Pretend it's day one, but it's not. So that we can say, okay, we see the orders flowing in. Yes, they've gone through the validations that they need to, et cetera, as it moves down all the way until collecting money. When we've gotten that under our belt, we can say, yep, the teams agree, this is ready, and then you execute. And it's not the first time you've done it.
Yeah, I think practice cutovers is something that, at least speaking for myself, I don't think I've ever seen a rewrite project do a practice cutover Isaac, have you?
No, and this entire time, first of all, this is fascinating, and you're very well spoken, so it's like the story is fantastic. Um, but this entire time, I was thinking through of like all the different analogs, putting the engineer in the place of the customer in this case,
Mhm.
like the change managers, like the people working on the project, saying, what's going to happen to me. Imagine all the people you hired in an old that worked in PHP, for example, and now they're going to move to Nest.js or some other platform. All those PHP experts, what's going to happen to me? You know, so I was just trying to play it all through from the concept of the rewrite flow as our end essentially, and like I don't think we've even discussed the concept of a change manager, like training all the people to program in the new system if you were to cut over. So there was so
Mhm.
much more thought put into your process here that certainly makes it iterative to me. But now I'm like, oh, I got all these ideas I want to take back to how you should do it. Our little thesis ship
Yes.
approach that we've been talking about. So sorry to deviate there, but yeah, either way, I have not seen practice cutovers. No, and we should have them 100%.
Yeah, the only time in my career I've seen practice cutovers is when I worked in finance, and periodically the regulations would change. And so on weekends leading up to the regulate like new regulations published, they say as of X date, the stock market is going to work like this now. And it's like okay, and so on weekends we would practice with the thing, but it wasn't a major change. It'd be crazy stuff like you're going right now you're trading at 4 decimal places, and as of this date you're trading at 3 decimal places, and this is the rounding rules and all these things, but minor, relatively minor, like they're not entire shift changes.
Mm-hmm.
But still, we'd do practice cutovers, changeovers, I guess, because it, but nowhere to near the level that you were talking about.
Mhm. I wonder if the difference maybe, and I know what you were just explaining, Jeffrey, has to do with actually having some experience in it, but Isaac, you're referring to not embracing this type of an idea at all. And I wonder if it has to do with, the difference in methodologies. And so obviously software development is often, obviously depends on iteration and depends on the agile method,
Mm-hmm.
and delivering an MVP or a minimum viable product. And in this case, although we can often use that term MVP when we're doing an ERP migration, because one of my favorite quotes from a past manager that I had, was, it's probably from somebody else, but he used to say it to us all the time. He used to say, "Don't let great be the enemy to good." And that's fair when we're making a major change like this. Good enough to get business done on day one sometimes
Mm-hmm.
needs to be what we all agree to, as opposed to it being perfect. And yet, at the same point, just like art, just like a performer on the stage, you have to have attempted to try it beforehand. And it's always going to turn out just a little bit differently, no matter what mock cutover you're doing. And at the same point, you have the experience gained so that you can respond properly. So ERP migrations tend to lend themselves more towards a waterfall style methodology. That doesn't mean we are not iterating within. So, for example, during the configuration phase or the build phase, or when you're actually in the system designing it
Mm-hmm.
actively for the business requirements for the company. In that case, you're spending the time to write something, test it, smoke test it, and then say, oh, that wasn't quite right. Doesn't meet every requirement. We're going to go back. We're going to tweak that. Before you're going through the full system validation phase, where we're actually doing comprehensive test cases on every single module, every potential business process that we would need to do. Someone wants to return something, but they want to split tender. They don't want it all back on the credit card they used, or crazy things that could happen. That's where the validation phase is focused on. But we're definitely iterating as you build, and yet still there are phase gates that need to be in place for a successful ERP migration that have a lot more to do with, can we say this is achieved before we move forward, which is different from software development. And those are, from my experience of when I've been involved on that side from product management as opposed to project management or program management, those have so much more to do with epics and user stories. And that process then is like, here, I'm going to release to you and show you this bit, and you're going to give me the feedback, and I'm going to change it again. There isn't necessarily an opportunity within that to be like, hey, let's practice. And part of the reason is it's a piece as opposed to the entire pie.
One thing that is striking me very hard right between the eyes as you're speaking, SaaS companies especially are prone to this, where they've got a system and they decide it needs a refresh, and they're going to give it a facelift. They're going to change some stuff about how it goes. And rather than show this to the customer and, as you say, work with them and get them trained and everything else, they like to spring it on customers as to make a splash, to have it come fully formed like Athena out of Zeus's head, where it's going to be this thing of ultimate grace and beauty, and everyone's going to love it. And everyone knows that as soon as you change any website, everyone's going to hate it. And then a month later, they're whatever. And then 2 years later, when you do it to them again, they're going to hate the new thing, and they're going to tell you about how great the old thing was. And what you were just saying about how users have so much of their identity tied up in this stuff, especially if they use it all day, every day, that it's striking me that the way web companies do this is such a hostile act towards their users, as you explain it. And I'm just struck by that, and I'm stuck there. It's looping in my head, where I'm like, oh man, she's so right. We just really hurt customers when we do this.
That's a fair point. And we've even experienced, in my seat, I've seen that happen a lot of times when a new release of that software platform comes out and suddenly everything breaks. And no warning was offered. Now, oftentimes, at least what I can stand for is that Oracle and NetSuite give you the notes about what's going to change before that software release comes out. However, they do it pretty often. If I'm not mistaken, it's every 6 months. So it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of keeping track of exactly what's going to shift. And then you don't necessarily have a platform where you can test if your customizations are going to succeed or not. Oof. You get a warning, but not necessarily a test bed. Now, in some cases, and again, I'm just speaking about Oracle NetSuite because it's what my experience is grounded in. If you have multiple environments that you pay for, one of them can upgrade prior to the other, and you can actually test. So there are some opportunities there within that particular company's style of releasing new upgrades that you have a shot at it. And you have to have somebody who's watching for it very closely. So that administrator has got to be paying close attention to when those new release notes come out and finding out what timing the environments are going to be upgraded. But it's possible in that case. But I agree in that sense that it's almost shocking. It's like, well, if we're your clients and you'd like to keep us paying you, wouldn't it be wise to bring some buy-in along the way as well? So, I think Oracle NetSuite does a decent job of trying to bridge that gap and keep both sides relatively happy with a few options.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, some websites, the better ones, are like, hey, try out the beta version of our new UI. And then when they release it, they say, if you hate this thing, you can go back to Classic for a while.
Right.
Until they offer options. But a lot of customers, a lot of times people don't. They're just like, new everything. Aren't we wonderful?
Right. Yeah. And that assumption that folks are going to embrace it and be excited is obviously not rooted in reality. And hopefully, or based on a hope that whatever company is choosing to do that is attaching itself to, or almost like when you ask the question or you answer a question that you wish you had been asked when somebody offers you something that you're like, oh, that's out of alignment with my boundaries. That's kind of like what I see that as, where they're going to be like, it's going to be great. We're going to assume so. And one of the things that this reminds me to offer to you two that is a part of what I'm passionate about in organizational change management is mindfulness. So mindfulness practice helps us move through and understand our actual responses to what's happening so that we have the opportunity to pause, to assess, and to devise a response as opposed to being reactive. A lot of times when we're reactive, we haven't necessarily chosen all the pieces of what we're going to do next. And mindfulness within change management offers that chance to step back and ask yourself, if I'm asking myself what's in it for me, do I have those answers? Are those answers sufficient? What kind of changes do I sense when I'm thinking about that? Does my breathing get faster? Am I nervous? Am I picturing things that don't sit well with me? Do I have questions I need to ask? And all of that helps each individual person, because the change is based, it's not just an organization who needs to adopt it. That's based on every individual person's perspective. And like we've been talking about, how deeply tied to their identity their daily work is. That varies for many people. And those emotional responses, like when you're engaging in a change like this, and I just I wrote a blog for the company I work for right now a little bit ago, and I had made mention that feelings cannot be configured or migrated. You can't.
That's a great quote.
And you have to navigate through each stage of a person's response. And so the approach that I took in the project that I had the pleasure of working with your sister, Jeffrey, on, I offered an optional mindfulness opportunity that was tailor-made for that particular project. So with each phase that was happening, there were particular prompts and a guided session that I offered people, whether it was on site, because we were still on site back then, or you could listen to the recording or join in on the online version of the meeting and just be silent. And I would offer mindfulness practice that gets you in touch with, first of all, just being able to calm the central nervous system. When we have the opportunity to breathe and to settle into that position of, okay, I'm safe, then real questions have the opportunity to be answered truthfully from the internal perspective, so you can know where you're at. And the ProSci methodology has some level of tie-in for this because they go through what's called ADKAR. And part of that is just, ADKAR is, if I remember it, and I didn't make sure that I wrote it down, awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement. I did it. So in that process, you're going to go back and forth sometimes. So am I aware why this project is happening? Yes, I'm totally aware. And then do I desire it to happen? Am I excited about this? Do I want this? Oh, I don't want this. I know why they're doing it, but why am I doing it? Then you might be back to awareness. What do I need to learn about what's in it for me? Then you move into, okay, I'm all in, right? So how do I actually execute this? And that's when you're in ability, in the state of ability in the ADKAR model, not inability. And so ability. And so that's when you're asking yourself, okay, do I feel ready? Do I know what to do on day one? Do I have any training? What do I need to fill those gaps in my knowledge? And that might set you back again. I don't want to do this anymore. Now you're back at desire. And so you move through that, but it's not a linear process. It's definitely something where it requires that inner sense and awareness of what your current response is to what's happening in the project. So from that perspective, that's something that I'm passionate about. I want to see more of. And so it's something that I'm advocating for in my current role and also professionally, personally, through the types of things that I like to share and bring up. And for the record, also, mindfulness is not just something that you just kind of come up with or, fly by the seat of your pants. There are multiple different ways to be certified in it. I'm certified. I have been since, I want to say, 2019. And that is exactly the reason why I thought, okay, I'm going to pull this into this project, because at the time when I got to do this massive, it was a $2.2 million budget for this ERP migration. It was a huge deal for a relatively it was a middle-sized to small-sized company. And I didn't have any previous experience to stack it up against. So what I had going for me is I didn't have preconceived notions. What I did know is I'm responsible not only for the project management side, so the scope, timeline, budget, but I'm also responsible for people accepting this. And because of that freshness that I had, where I hadn't seen it in the past, I thought, well, we need to do mindfulness. We need to understand how we're feeling about it, because, and there's something also about the experience that I had in that project, because we were a team that was still functioning on site together, that I know these people. I know what Susie needs. I know what John's going to think. I know exactly how Bob is going to feel, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, well, how do we help so that this can be something that we're all on board for? And I think that naivete almost, but also intuition, helped a lot with that particular project success, because I didn't see that as outlandish. I didn't see it as something that just isn't done or isn't part of it. I saw it as a necessity, and there were some people that were right on the boat with me, and it worked out really well. So the user adoption side of that project was far better than I think we ever could have imagined, because people knew what they were feeling at the time. And some people, here's the opportunity here that we don't realize. Some people decide, you know what, this isn't for me, and they leave. But they leave on their own terms, having made that decision because they were informed, because they understood, because they were aware of their response. And they said, I'm not okay with this anymore. And they change. And those that stay have varied positions of where they are, but those that are truly change advocates or change agents, as you can imagine we might call them, are the ones who really drive that. And because, Timmy next to me is a change agent and he's all in, he can sense that I might not be feeling it and might lean over and be like, hey, I can help you. Those types of things are really important when we're talking adoption. And they can happen in the remote world, obviously, as well, too. I'm just referring to this because it was my experience to do this in an on-site company at the time. But yeah, those pieces of it, the mindfulness piece, I think is a great addition to the idea of change management and project management for ERP adoption success.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. What does it look like when users or the people are resistant to change? Like, how does that play out for a company? So you do the cutover, and the cutover works reasonably well, let's say, but then the people have not been prepared and they are angry or they are frustrated. And what is a bad, poorly prepared company experience?
That poorly prepared company most likely will lose money. And I say it that way because if the users themselves are not bought in or uninformed, they're going to execute improperly. And as a result, whatever that may entail is going to require fixing, or in some cases, even engaging with your consulting firm to come in and make changes or adapt something to each individual's needs to be able to be successful if they haven't been prepared and successfully prior to. So I directly correlate that with losing money. And that's from the corporate perspective. Obviously, morale is a huge deal. So when morale falls, obviously business is also going to suffer. If you're not comfortable being in your seat to do your job, that's obviously going to affect your execution. So that's why that people side of it is so important. I think in summation, that's what I would warn against if you don't have that buy-in and that preparation for those users to adopt the system when it's time.
Yeah, I personally have done several projects where there was some upgrade or something, and that users hated it, and they hated it so much that I had to find a way to make the new system look like the old system for them, so that they didn't have to update their processes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a huge factor throughout the entire life of an ERP migration where you do not want to recreate the exact same thing from the old system to the new system. From the perspective of achieving the goals of the business processes and being able to obtain and sell your product and obtain your payments, absolutely. But that's why involving people, and that's why we go back to that sponsor. How is the sponsor packaging this? How much information are we offering to the user base from the beginning to be like, hey, check it out. Hey, join us for this demo. Or, oh, look, we put this together for this particular process or module. Here's a little snippet of 30 seconds of what it looks like. So that the brain starts to accept what that new platform actually visually will do to their own brain. And if there's opportunities throughout the change management side of things for people to give feedback, then they feel that, hey, my voice could be heard. I could have an influence on making this better, which obviously creates buy-in because you're a part of it.
I can see that the sponsor thing is something missing, I think, from the tech flow, the tech analogy side of this, right? I think all the rewrites probably kind of fall around the producty kind of like, I feel like the advocate is like the product person on the team advocating for the rewrite, and maybe somebody one or two levels above them, but not like driven from the top down like that. And I feel like that 7 times more likely to succeed metric is something I'd like to explore in those cases when people want to cut over to something new and iterate there, but you still need some kind of the morale piece, so the people piece, because a lot of times we'll talk about everything here from the rewrite perspective or not rewriting, all the tech reasons why. But the only thing we've done a few episodes about like the psychology behind accepting the rewrite or pushing for the rewrite, or what if the rewrite, I think we've done on what if it fails, egg on your face kind of thing. So my main takeaway from all this is, man, I think I should hire more people with theater backgrounds.
Careful, you might get drama.
Well, speaking of drama, I was thinking of the audacity of somebody to think, this huge rewrite or this cutover or this new system is going to be so amazing, it's going to blow you away. We're not going to give you any warning. We know everything about you. We know exactly what you want, and we're going to release the most perfect thing. Like, that's insane. Who would come up with that? Like, you have to have feedback on what you're doing. So that's drama for me.
I've worked with many product people who are of the mindset that it must emerge fully formed, and you must surprise it so that you can then the product will be so amazing you can have marketing and it will go viral. And I'm like, that is not how any of that works.
People infamously love to be surprised, and they hate habit, right?
Yes.
I want everything to change suddenly, confuse me.
Sophia, this has been amazing. We are at 50 minutes, so I want to keep it well. I don't want to keep going because I have many questions. I want to know about what happens. It's 7 times more likely to succeed, but what happens when things fail? Because that is a huge question. With rewrites, when things fail, usually you lose the whole development team and other sundry disasters. It's huge, and I'm very curious what happens with an ERP migration, but I don't want to keep going. So I will tease, and maybe we can get you back on another time. If people want to learn more about you, read this blog post that you mentioned, where can they do that?
My LinkedIn page is most likely the best option, Sophia Rosa. I've only recently reposted that blog, so it's pretty close to the top of my profile posts right now. And that would be a good spot to start.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope we can get you back to pick your brain some more.
That sounds fun.
I'm
Awesome.
Jeffrey Sherman.
I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.